Hello and welcome to another tutorial video for a writing exercise 8, sensory details in writing, touch. This is the last sensory detail that I'm going to be going over, but I'm just going to quickly go over what sensory details are again. Sensory details are descriptions that uses the 5 senses, sight, smell, sound, taste, and touch to add depth in writing and evoke readers' imagination. Touch is the tactile sense of how something feels to someone. I have listed a couple of key points as I have done with the others. The first is to practice writing each of the 5 senses individually. So just like all the other senses that I went over in previous videos, it can be really helpful to practice the sense of touch individually as well. I actually think that this one is probably the most neglected out of all of the 5 senses when it comes to writers using their sensory details in writing. I think touch is the one that's used the least because it's one that's not really talked about too much. But my next key point is to know words that indicate touch, such as texture, temperature, weight, and their effects on others, meaning on people, animals, objects, things of that nature. The next key point is one that I really think should be taken into consideration that not many writers actually think about, which is to pay attention to the details of the conditions of things or their environment, meaning that certain objects, things, or people can have different details based on the condition that they're in. So, for example, a hot cup of coffee that turns cold or lukewarm after it's been sitting on the counter for a while, for example. Just little details like that, how things can change over time, is something to keep in mind when it comes to this particular sense. And finally, the last key point is to show the sense of touch by your characters' physical reactions or responses through their dialogue. I have a chart here of words that indicate touch. In the first column, I go over texture. Texture describes how something feels when touching a person, object, animal, all those types of things. Texture also has the ability to change depending on length of time or a particular thing's environment, which goes back to this key point here of paying attention to the details of things based on the condition that they're in. For example, a curly-haired woman whose hair falls straight when wet, or a comfortable couch which becomes lumpy and sunken in over time, or depending on who's sitting in it. Those little details like that can really be useful when it comes to describing the sense of touch. The next word that indicates touch is for temperature. Temperature describes how hot or cold something is when touching a person, object, animal, etc. Like texture, temperature is also known to change over time depending on the time, the atmospheric climate, or environment, which could be, for example, the hot cup of coffee again, that can turn cold or lukewarm after sitting for a while. And finally, the last one that I have here is for weight, which describes how light or heavy something is when touching a person, animal, or object. Weight can differ based on various people or objects or conditions. For example, a person's wet clothes on them will be more heavier than someone wearing dry clothes, for example. So just those little details is some things that you could pay attention to when it comes to describing the sense of touch. And in the next column, I just go over some touch adjectives. There are many different touch adjectives that writers can use in describing the sense of touch, or things such as soft, heavy, smooth, grainy, prickly, sharp, ice cold, scorchy, or feathery, for example. All of those are different types of adjectives that can describe how things feel when it comes to the sense of touch. And finally, again, I just go over character reactions. Show the sense of touch by your character's physical reactions or responses through their dialogue. Below here, I have a little short passage from my Christian and historical fiction novel, The Pack of Freedom, just for an example to show the sense of touch. I'm just going to go over reading it really quickly. Once we passed the mountains, we reached the foothills. For hours on end, we journeyed through a field of dried straw-like grass that looked like an open field of golden hay. The rough, bristly texture brushing against my skin and the invisible sting of buzzing mosquitoes made me itch. I stopped from time to time and slapped and scratched my legs. For 7 acres, we could see nothing but a couple of lone pine trees. I was beginning to think we were going in the wrong direction, but Noah was the leader, so I reckoned he knew better than me. That's just an example just to show the sense of touch based on the texture of the grass that my lead female character Nellie walks through along with the others during their journey to Canada, as well as the mosquito bites that she's gotten, which makes her itch, is just another detail to show the sense of touch. But that's pretty much all that I have for this video. I hope all of these sensory detail videos for this little mini-series was helpful, and thank you for watching.